Now let's turn our attention to Pakistan. Today is the 29th of June. It's Eid al-Adha, one of the holiest days in the Islamic Republic and the Islamic calendar. The celebrations are set to go on for 3 days, but Islamabad is hoping to celebrate more than Eid this weekend. They're hoping to avert a crisis, to meet a tough deadline. They had a deal with the IMF that expires tomorrow. This deal was signed in 2019. The IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, was to give Pakistan more than $6 billion. But as always, conditions applied. Now, Pakistan being Pakistan did not meet those conditions. So last October, the IMF froze the bailout. Some of the money has already gone to Pakistan, the rest is frozen. The IMF stopped giving any more installments, or tranches as they call them. And this deal expires tomorrow, that is the 30th of June. So unless Pakistan pulls a rabbit out of the hat, it's not getting the money. And it wants this money desperately. So Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is running from pillar to post. He's had multiple meetings with the IMF chief last week, first in person in Paris and then online. Then on Sunday, Pakistan revised its annual budget to suit the expectations of the IMF. It introduced some fiscal reform. Now the world is watching to see if Pakistan can secure a deal at the 11th hour, as are the people of Pakistan, because they're the ones who've been suffering. Record inflation, higher taxes, steeper interest rates, and a devastating flood last year. It left almost 2,000 people dead and 2 million homeless. So it's no surprise that this Eid doesn't feel too festive for many in Pakistan. Here's a report.
It's Eid al-Adha in Pakistan today, one of the holiest days in Islam. It roughly translates to the Feast of the Sacrifice. And for many Pakistanis, their sacrifice is worth more than ever this year. Because the country has been hammered by an economic disaster, and as a result, the prices of the sacrificial animals are soaring.
This year's inflation rate is higher than in past years, so the prices of sacrificial animals has also gone sky high. Because of this, there are fewer animals in markets compared to the past, as many people are opting to share animals and give a joint sacrifice.
At some places, prices are reportedly close to double of what they were a year ago. And there are a lot of reasons for this. Pakistan's economic crisis is, of course, the main one. The war in Ukraine is another cause. It has led to rising food and fuel prices around the world.
As petrol became more expensive, the prices also increased. Now coming to this market and renting a stall here is also higher. They used to charge less. The transportation costs have also increased. These are the reasons why the cattle prices are higher this year. So much so that an animal which we used to sell for 150,000 Pakistani rupees last year is now around 240 or 250 Pakistani rupees. One main reason is that the cattle fodder has also become expensive, hence the cattle prices are high.
Add to this the losses caused by last year's devastating floods. A lot was spoken about the human cost, but it wasn't just humans that died.
The floods last year caused diseases in livestock, whether it was in Sindh, Punjab, or Balochistan province. Many cattle died of diseases, which has also caused a shortage of cattle this year.
Pakistani officials estimate that about 700,000 cattle were lost in the floods, and the disease and food shortages that followed affected even more animals. So the supply of animals for the Eid al-Adha sacrifice has decreased and prices are up. The devout will still buy the sacrificial animals though, often with cash. Problem is, they're short of that too. ATMs are running out of cash. This is happening in the city of Karachi. They don't have money, and in many cases, goats are being stolen. Yes, stolen. Thieves are robbing people who walk home with the animals they've bought. About 70 such incidents have taken place so far. For people like this, even the festival of Eid brings no cheer. The economic crisis has been tough on the nation, and like always, it's the most vulnerable who bear the brunt.
And now let's talk about China. It is expanding its influence in West Asia and establishing a strong presence through economic investments and underhand tactics. The Chinese police stations have reached West Asia. That's right, Chinese police is operating in this region too. Now, we've reported extensively about them in the past. In the West, they've been used for spying operations. China has police stations all over the world. Countries like the US and the UK have moved to shut them down. Now, West Asia too has to deal with them. And where are these police stations? Reports say so far they've been found in two countries, Israel and the UAE. Israel has one police station, the UAE has two. There's limited information about these facilities, but we'll tell you what we know. In Israel, China has operated one station since 2020. We don't know the exact location, but we can tell you who's running it. The police of Nantong. Nantong is in southeastern China, but why does the police in Nantong need a police station in faraway Israel? Let me show you a report from last year, and I'm quoting from what the report says. The Nantong City Overseas Police and Overseas Chinese Linkage Service Center is an important link between Nantong and the international community and safeguards the rights and interests of Nantong overseas. So they call it an Overseas Chinese Linkage Service Center. Sounds very complicated, but let there be no doubt. This is a spying outpost. Reports say it is used to monitor Chinese nationals in Israel. In recent years, there's been a large influx. And why are the Chinese going to Israel? Well, broadly for two reasons. First is tourism. The second is to work in the construction business. Israel increasingly relies on Chinese workers. They're seen as dependable and skilled. Officially, China says the police stations there are to service these citizens, to help the immigrant population, but their activities do raise doubts. Consider what's happening in the UAE. Reports say it has two Chinese police stations, one in Dubai and another at an unknown location. Now, who operates them? The police of Nantong and Wenzhou. Again, two remote Chinese police departments. They use the facilities in the UAE like detention centers. And I'm not the one saying this. This has come from a former detainee, a woman named Wu Huan. She was living in Dubai with her fiancé. The fiancé was believed to be a dissident, a Chinese dissident. So the Chinese officials went after Wu. They abducted her from a hotel in Dubai. Reports say Wu was then taken to a villa. There she was kept with two Uyghurs, and she was held there for 8 days. She was questioned and threatened by Chinese officials. Later, they made her sign legal documents. They incriminated the fiancé. He was accused of harassing her. After she signed those papers, Wu was released. As of 2021, she was seeking asylum in the Netherlands. And I must also tell you this. Officials in both China and Dubai have rejected her claims. But in her testimony, Wu also names a Chinese man, Li Zuhang. He is the Consul General of the Chinese consulate in Dubai. And Wu says this man interrogated her. He asked her if foreign groups gave her any money and if she was being paid to act against China. Imagine this. We're talking about a Chinese diplomat behaving like an interrogator, and that too in foreign territory. The West is cracking down on such Chinese police stations, but West Asia is denying their presence. And given China's growing clout in the region, it's hard to say if they will face action or will be given a free pass. Our next story is about work. You know that thing you do between actually living? It's no secret that our workplaces can lead to a lot of frustration for some. Ranting about work is an international pastime, you could say. Long hours, having to constantly be reachable, burning the midnight oil. There's a good chance most of you have been through this. We enjoy it until we don't. And all of us have a different threshold, but that's not even the point. What if we told you that your company, apart from putting you through all of this, may also be stealing your wages? Tonight, we want to talk about wage theft, and we want to tell you how that works. You see, companies are governed by labor laws. Across the world, all countries have such laws, and a lot of companies flout them. The result is wage theft, among other things, meaning your company is not paying part or all of what you're owed. And how do they do it? Well, there's something called overtime. I'm sure you know this. Most of us do it. That's when you work beyond your regular shift, when you put in extra hours to complete that presentation or show up early to work for that meeting or work through the weekend for that crucial project. It's all overtime. Now, the law says you should be paid extra for it, usually around double of your normal hourly wages. But do you get it? Well, that's wage theft. The second example is work breaks, or rather the lack of work breaks. How many times have you been at your desk from dawn till dusk with no time for any pause, no time for lunch, no time to go to the washroom, definitely no time to stretch your legs? What do you think during those moments? Do you think it's just one of those days that you can take a break once that urgent task is complete? By denying you a work break, your company is once again committing wage theft, because most countries have labor laws that mandate a break. India, for example, has a law like this. Companies have to give you a 30-minute break during work hours, and you cannot work more than 5 hours straight. That is the law. Does your company follow it? Next, we look at leave. In other words, paid offs. How many do you get in a year? Do you end up using all of them? Do you waste leave even after carry forwards? Have you had to give up on leave because your team is short-staffed or you've been told you're indispensable? It may sound like you've been given your due recognition, but technically you're being robbed, because the leaves you were promised in your contract are a form of compensation. And these are just a few examples of wage theft. There are many more, like not reimbursing expenses or companies making random deductions. Wage theft comes in a lot of forms, and it leaves a huge unseen dent on the economy. I have the numbers. In the US, for example, wage theft is estimated at about $50 billion every year, $50 billion annually. That's more than the amount stolen in bank robberies and shoplifting and credit card fraud. 50 billion of wage theft. It's actually more than all those combined. But wage theft usually goes under the radar. If you're from India, all these examples of wage theft must sound quite common. And most likely, you can't do very much about it. You want to impress your bosses. You don't want to file a labor case against your company that may drag on in courts for years. So you take it on the chin. But just know that your company is stealing from you. And when you rise through the ranks, perhaps you can try and change this system. Simone Biles is back. She's a star gymnast, a 7-time Olympic medalist. And she plans to return to competition at the US Classic. It's a low-profile competition open to elite gymnasts. 2 years ago, she last competed at the Tokyo Games, but suddenly withdrew mid-event. This move sent ripples across the world, but Biles said she needed to protect her mind and body. You see, the world of sports can be uncompromising and very demanding. Athletes are rewarded for giving everything to the sport. Coaches demand it, so do the fans. But in recent years, we've seen a shift. High-profile athletes are now prioritizing their mental health over their career. Our next report tells you more.
This is Simone Biles, an icon in the world of gymnastics, a 7-time Olympic medalist who suddenly withdrew from the sport 2 years ago, shocking the world. The news spread like wildfire. After all, Biles was at the top of her career when she took this decision. But, undeterred, Biles stood by her decision, saying she needed to focus on her mental health, her body and mind, and for that she took time off. But now Biles is back, and again this is making headlines across the world. But her return isn't just a story of a comeback, it's a celebration of an athletic revolution. Because when the star athlete decided to step back, her decision was both applauded and condemned. Why the latter? Because such a decision is a rarity in the world of sports, which is relentless and uncompromising. It rewards perseverance, so athletes give and give and give, often at the cost of their own mental health. But in recent years, a shift seems to be occurring. Biles's withdrawal definitely counts as one of the most high-profile cases, but she's not the only one to speak up and step back. In 2021, tennis star Naomi Osaka spoke about her struggles with depression. Then she withdrew from the French Open. Michael Phelps is the most decorated Olympian in history. Recently, he too spoke about his struggles with substance abuse and depression. This year, Brooklyn Nets' Ben Simmons talked about his mental health problems. At the Winter Olympics in Beijing this February, many athletes from multiple sports spoke up. And what concerns do they share? Athletes of color have talked about how racism made their mental health worse. Players, young and old, also talk about the toll social media takes.
I would think as a player now, just to stay off social media as much as possible. Maybe if you need to for sponsors, put stuff out, but don't necessarily take stuff in where you read it. In my day, I was always told, don't pick up the newspaper, try not to watch what they say about you on television, because it does hurt. And particularly when you're young, you're trying to grow up. It's difficult enough without everybody having a voice and an opinion about your hairstyle, your dress, your attitude, your whatever it is.
But the fact that these conversations are occurring is a big deal for sports, which has long held the belief, no pain, no gain. Let us give you an example. At the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, gymnast Kerri Strug famously broke her ankle on the vault. She told her coach about it, who said that she finished her routine despite the injury. Most of us would find it hard to walk with a broken ankle. Imagine doing air flips with it and nailing a landing. But back then, it was considered good coaching to keep pushing a player. And Strug followed this advice, helping the US team win gold. So it turned out all very well for the team. But what about Strug? She retired shortly after. At that time, this was acceptable. But now, things seem to be changing.
Yeah, I think I was of the generation of athletes who would suck it up and rub some dirt on it, was what my coach used to say. And so, I think that with some of us who are providers in the field, the reality is there's no science behind that. There is nothing that says, the reality is this is going to make you the best athlete. What we're actually finding, and there is science and literature behind, is the fact that to address an issue before it becomes a crisis, or to work with somebody around their mental health, can make them a stronger athlete. And they're overcoming adversity. And there are tips and tricks and strategies that are actually going to improve somebody's mental health and performance.
So maybe it isn't best to suck it up and rub some dirt on it. Because maybe avoiding mental health conversations may be the reason many bite the dust far too early in their careers, the ill effects of which haunt these athletes far too late in their lives. Because sometimes giving up and stepping back takes just as much courage as fighting on.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. To those who are celebrating Happy Eid, Muslims across the world are celebrating the festival of Eid al-Adha. Air tankers trying to extinguish wildfires that are burning the US state of Arizona. Thousands joined Madrid's Pride March, chanting slogans against the far-right Vox party ahead of the July elections. And finally, what makes the 29th of June significant? Let's go back to the year 1976, when Seychelles, a country in East Africa, achieved independence, ending 166 years of British rule. We're leaving you with these images. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
سيذكر من يخشى
وسألك منه فقال محمد
Mi familia mola más porque tiene dos mamás. ¡Por sistema!